You'd do anything for your pet, right? But if you decided to move abroad, would you spend 5 days of non-stop driving, $1,800, and risk getting stranded at the border just to bring them with you? Corby did exactly that to get his rescue pup Luna to Roatan, Honduras. But a tiny mistake almost cost him everything. Stay tuned to find out how you can avoid this simple paperwork error so that your relocation isn't a nightmare. I am lucky to be joined by a person with a fantastic story telling us something that I think a lot of people are interested in knowing. So let's go ahead and get some details from him about where he's from and where we are now and how long he has been here for.
My name's Corby Walker, 50 years old, originally from the Central Texas area just north of San Antonio. Moved down here last August with my wife and my 2 kids. So we're just past our 1-year anniversary here on Roatan, Honduras.
And you have a very interesting story to tell us about coming down here to Honduras, Roatan, don't you?
Yeah, had an interesting trip. We have a dog that was 11 pounds too large to take on an airplane. So that 11 pounds cost me 1,800 miles in 5 days driving down through Mexico, Guatemala, and to Honduras.
So let's tell your story because it is very fascinating. I really enjoyed hearing it before this. So your family came down here and you decided to drive. What kind of vehicle do you have and what kind of dog do you have?
So my wife has it's a 2012 Ford Explorer. Not very high value vehicle, which is why we decided to bring it down here for import fee purposes. My dog is a shelter dog, a rescue dog, member of the family now. That's why we decided to drive her down. We wouldn't have made the move without her.
Let's go ahead and just take a peek at this little cutie we got here. Luna, you little cutie. You're such a cutie. There she is. Okay, look at her. This is, what's her name?
Luna.
Hello, Luna. Hey, Luna, you cutie. And Luna is a rescue dog. Where did you get Luna from?
We got her from the Bulverde Humane Society. So my daughter volunteered at the Bulverde Humane Society at the time, and she twisted her arm, and we allowed her to get this dog, and now we're inseparable.
So you decided, okay, I need to bring my beautiful dog, my rescue dog, down from Texas, and I'm going to bring this lower cost vehicle to pay less import fees, right?
Yeah, the import fees can be really high here, and the government of Honduras kind of arbitrarily values the vehicle that you bring in the country based on the pie in the sky that day that you bring the car in. So I came down with this vehicle with 280,000 miles on it. It's a 2012. Highly recommend that we had a Blue Book value sheet printed out before I left, and I actually had that notarized by my bank. Was nice enough to notarize it for me so it looked more official, which is kind of a joke, but so it looked more official. We had a notarized value of about $4,800 when I drove the car down.
That's a really smart thing to do because they're just going to make up whatever value when you get here, right? If you don't have these things already prepared.
Right. And I actually had that Blue Book value, and when I crossed over into Honduras, they arbitrarily assigned it a value of $10,000 regardless of me having that paperwork. So I ended up having to argue with them further down the road when we had to register the vehicle.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning of your story because this is quite an interesting story. You left Texas and you crossed the border with your vehicle and your dog at what border?
So we crossed over at a small border crossing that just north of Nuevo Laredo. It's called the Columbia River Bridge. And I chose that spot because it is a very small crossing, and from all the stories that I'd heard, not much traffic and pretty easy to get through there, which turned out to be the case. When I got there, there were 2 other families that were checking through, got all my paperwork done, processed the dog's paperwork, processed the car paperwork, and was through that check station in about 30 minutes.
But do you think it was because you forgot to do something?
In hindsight, yeah. There was an additional step. There was one guy working at this border check station who was checking in people's belongings, the items they brought in their car, and I had my car chock full of fishing tackle. I had 3 big PVC tubes on top of the car with my rods. The whole car was full of our belongings and my dog. So when I pulled up to the check station where the one guy was checking everybody's belongings, I spoke in my best Spanish and he waved me through. He said, "No, gringo, vámonos." So I took off. So I didn't get any of the requisite paperwork upon entry into Mexico that I should have, and that ended up biting me in the form of a bribe when I started to cross into Guatemala.
So if that's your plan, if you're planning to drive down, going through Mexico into Guatemala, and you want to bring a lot of stuff in your vehicle, definitely take his word of advice and his story as a lesson. You need to have some type of, I guess, a confirmation of documents or a confirmation of your things in your vehicle. Because what happened when you got to the border? Which border did you go to first?
So I crossed over into Guatemala, and it was at El Cebo was the check station, or another really small check station into Guatemala. I got there about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But before I got to the Guatemala check station, you have to check out of Mexico. So checking out of Mexico, everything went fine. I went inside the building, did all my paperwork with me, with the car, with the dog. Everything was fine. And then I got back out and started talking to the very nice gentlemen who were nice enough to point me in the right direction. When I got back outside, they asked me for my paperwork on all the items in the car. And I said, well, I don't have any paperwork on it, because in Colombia, at the Columbia River Bridge, the one guy they had waiting there, your amigo, said, take off, you're good. So what ended up happening is, long story short, I had to pay these guys a $75 bribe behind the front seat, because they didn't want to take the payment outside the car. They wanted to take it inside the car where they couldn't be seen. I paid them $75, and they said, all right, gringo, you're free to go.
So let's talk a little bit more about the documents that you had to show in order to first enter Mexico and Colombia border, and then exit through El Cebo. What did you show them for your car and for your dog to cross?
For the car, obviously you have to have the title. I had the original copy of the title, and my wife's name was the only name on the title, which we'll talk about here in a minute. The original copy of the title, you had to have insurance, and then at the border you secure what's called the Mexican insurance. You have to secure Mexican insurance on your vehicle while you're driving through Mexico. Show all that paperwork for the dog. The dog had to have all of her shots. And what you'll want to do there is work with your veterinarian to work with the consulate here in Honduras to make sure that the dog has all of the shots they need to get into the country, as well as being chipped. To bring a dog from the United States to Honduras, they have to be chipped. So if your dog isn't chipped, you have to get that done before they're allowed in the country.
Okay, that's good information to know. I didn't even recognize that the dog was chipped in. That's a necessity. So you brought down all those documents, and then let's go back to El Cebo. You're crossing into Guatemala. What happens?
So after getting shaken down by the Mexican guys at that border crossing, I show up at El Cebo at 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon. Keep in mind, this check station is closed over the weekend, closed Saturday, Sunday, so these guys are already having Friday siesta. 1 o'clock, I show them all the paperwork for the dog. I show them the paperwork for me personally. And then we get to the car paperwork, and I show them 14 pages of documentation on the car. Unbeknownst to me, even though I'd done my research, I didn't have a letter that was notarized in the States giving me permission to take my wife's car into Guatemala.
Because your name wasn't on the title.
My name was not on the title. So the jefe was there and was not going to let me pass. He kept saying, no pase, no pase. And this is 1 o'clock. By this time, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. The sheep and the goats at the border check station are already circling the car. The car's running, the dog's in the car, and I'm flipping out. So ultimately, I had to contact my wife, who was already here in Roatan. She had to get a hold of a local attorney on a Friday afternoon to compose a letter and have it notarized, which is no small feat here in Roatan. And they had to email that letter to the border official, and he got it at 4:45 p.m., and they let me through.
And that was right before it closed at 5, was it?
They closed at 5 o'clock, and they were closed for the whole weekend. So had my wife not been here to get that done, I would have been spending the weekend in no man's land between Mexico and Guatemala.
Oh boy, yep, that's no bueno, that's no bueno. I'd like to say thank you so much for watching my videos, and if you want to show support for my channel, please hit that like and subscribe like always. And if you want to go above and beyond, you can buy me a coffee, you can support me on Patreon, and you can also join my channel as a member. That goes to me and really helps me provide all the things that I need in order to make these high quality videos for you guys here in Latin America. Let's get back to the video. So you drove through Guatemala and you saw a couple nice places on the way, right?
No, not really, because by the time I got out of the border check station, it was late afternoon. So the first thing I saw when I left the border was three cops who stopped me about a mile in from the border check station. At which point I was already fuming angry that I spent 4 hours sweating my butt off at the border check station.
Yeah.
Three cops that were maybe 21, 22 years old stopped me and started asking about all of my stuff in my car. And I proceeded to tell them, you need to go ask your amigos at the border check station. I just spent 4 hours there.
Yeah.
Okay, gringo, vámonos. So they let me go.
You're heated, so heated there.
Pretty heated.
Oh, that's a bit too hot for us.
So that afternoon, and everybody will tell you, you're not supposed to drive at night in Mexico. You're not supposed to drive at night in Guatemala for safety reasons and because of the condition of the roads. And that definitely holds true in Western Guatemala. So I'm driving into the sunset, trying to make it to my next stop where I'm going to spend the night. And there are potholes that would swallow the whole car up. There are speed bumps that were so tall that I was scraping the bottom of the Ford Explorer as you cross over them slowly. The roads are horrible in Western Guatemala.
So that is a pointer for all of you, and that's definitely true for pretty much all of Latin America. I never personally drive at night between cities. Do not drive at night. It's too much of a risk, especially for big vehicles. So you crossed through Guatemala, and then where did you go to cross into Honduras?
So Corinto was the name of the town, the border town between Guatemala and Honduras. I got there, I think it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon after driving through the remainder of Guatemala. Didn't have any problems there, at least at the time of the crossing. Presented the dog's paperwork, presented my paperwork. It did take a little bit longer. It took about 2.5 hours at the border to get everything processed, and then I was on my way headed to La Ceiba.
So from La Ceiba, for those that don't know, to come to this island, you need to go in a ferry yourself or fly. And then he had his car, so he had to send it in a form of transport. What company did you use to send over your vehicle?
I believe it was Island Shipping that I used. So yeah, as you said, you can't get on the ferry with your car. So you have to check your car into a ferry. Then I took a taxi directly from the ferry shop, the ferry stop where I checked my car in, took a taxi over to the People Ferry, and then got on the People Ferry with my dog. They don't let you bring your dog physically on the ferry with you. It can't sit in the seat with you. So they crate your dog. They put your dog in a dog crate, and the dog goes into the cargo area. So here's another word of advice. They don't provide bowls with any water for your pets when they go down into that cargo. And we crossed over in August. It was 100 degrees, pretty hot. So I took a bowl and filled it full of water and put it in the crate for our dog.
So definitely a good tip if you're bringing your dog over. Keep some extra bowls and some water and some food for your pet. Did you take Galaxy Wave over to cross?
Yeah, it was a Galaxy Wave ferry.
By the way, Galaxy Wave sponsored my motorcycle to be sent over here to Roatan. So thank you, Galaxy Wave, and awesome services from you guys. Thank you so much. So let's talk about when you arrived to the Roatan Island. You had to do something with your vehicle, right, after that?
So showed up on the island on the ferry. The vehicle showed up a couple days later. Went and picked up the vehicle from the ferry or from the shipping company. No problem. The rule here is you have 90 days from the day your vehicle enters with foreign plates in order to register the vehicle. So I drove around for the first 60 days or so, and then I ended up going to the customs office and asking the customs office, hey, what do I need to do to get the vehicle registered? They proceeded to tell me, don't worry about it now. Come back about a week before the 90 days up, and we'll take care of you. And this is where you guys need to be careful. This is what happened to me. This is my story. I came back about 4 days before the expiration, and they proceeded to tell me, well, everything's good, but we had a problem. When you crossed over the border, they registered your vehicle as a truck instead of an SUV. So we need to have it reclassified. And I said, okay, no problem. I'll just flip the switch in the system and reclassify it. We should be good to go. Oh, no, that's not that easy here. They have to do it at the border. So where you crossed over in Corinto. So I said, okay. She says, come back next week and we'll take care of everything for you. So I showed up the following week, and she proceeded to give me an extra invoice. And I asked what the extra invoice was for. And she said, well, that's the fine that you have to pay because you're past the 90 days. And I kind of shook my head. I'm like, well, I'm past the 90 days because you guys had an internal problem and you misclassified my vehicle when I crossed over the border. So why do I owe a fine? There was no arguing with them. I ended up having to pay $917.50 in a fine so that we could get my vehicle registered. So the word of advice and precaution is don't wait till the week before. You need to go in 45 to 60 days before the 90 days expires and make sure that everything was good on your vehicle when you cross the border.
I can already feel that you're a little heated even thinking about it.
Yeah.
Definitely a difficult thing. I have been heated myself trying to bring my bike over the borders, and I can totally tell. Like, you probably, the first thing you're thinking of is, I wonder if they did their job correctly, right? That's probably not your first thing to do, but you definitely should try the best you can to look over all the information on the title or on the import papers or on the papers that you're given, right? So you had to pay an import fee on top of this fee, that the overstay fee, right?
Right. And on top of that, I had to negotiate / argue with them on the value of the vehicle. They assigned a $10,000 value, and I pulled out the piece of paper and showed her, look, this is what I showed them at the border. Here's the NADA value from the States, and it's notarized. I need y'all to reduce the value because they charge you 20, 25, 30, depending on how they classify your vehicle. They charge you a large import fee on the value of the vehicle. So I ended up paying, I think it was $1,800 to $2,000 on a $5,000 value vehicle, plus the $917.50 fine to bring that vehicle over.
Kind of got squished in the situation.
Sure did. Yep. And you have no say. There's nothing you can really do about it.
Right. So overall, do you think it was worth bringing the vehicle over? Would you do it again? Would you suggest people not to do it? What is your point of view on it?
I would probably not do it again, except for the fact that we needed to get our dog down here. And that's a big problem that a lot of people run into, is how to get their pets here to Roatan. So aside from that, really the only other way to get a pet here is to hire somebody else to drive your pet here, or to charter a private flight, which is $15,000, which, you know, if you split with 2 other families, it's still $5,000 to get your pet here.
Oh boy.
So there's very limited ways to get larger pets here to Roatan.
Well, this is definitely a very interesting story. I didn't realize that bringing pets over was quite so complicated. I know that border crossings are complicated, and especially if you have limited Spanish, it makes things more difficult overall. But yeah, that was quite the story. As you said, you probably wouldn't suggest taking vehicles if you didn't have a pet. Is that your point of view?
There's plenty of vehicles that you can buy here. You can buy vehicles on the mainland that were salvage vehicles in the States. A lot of what they do here is they'll bring in salvage vehicles, they'll fix them up on the mainland, and they'll sell them to the gringos here on Roatan. And that's a whole nother video, and being careful on what vehicle you're buying here. Because
where do they usually come from? Are they sold in La Ceiba, like the nearest city, or?
La Ceiba, San Pedro Sula. A big source is San Pedro Sula. Any major city in Honduras is a big hub for them repairing vehicles that they bring in from the state.
Well, here you got it. That's a very awesome story, very full of whips and turns to get from Texas over here to the island of Roatan in Honduras. And I want to thank you so much, Corby, for sharing your story. It was definitely a thrill ride, and I really enjoyed hearing it, and I hope it provides some value to you guys. And if you're enjoying the content I'm providing, let's hear some comments about what you thought about his story. Are you planning to come down? Are you going to bring your pets? Do you think you should bring down a vehicle if it's not necessary? See you in the next one. Hasta la próxima.